Welcome to Mindful Management, Creating a Trauma-Informed Work Environment, a podcast by Chefalo Consulting, where we share the knowledge, stories, and resources you need to create a trauma-informed culture that supports wellness, growth, and resilience. I'm your host, Shenandoah Chefalo. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad that you're joining us for another episode. On today's episode, Mindful Management, Creating a Trauma-Informed Work Environment, we are delighted to welcome William Wright, who is the founder and CEO of CORE Remastered LLC, a transformative coaching firm dedicated to personal and professional development. As a certified professional coach, William employs a unique blend of expertise, from energy leadership to physical wellness, to guide his clients towards achieving their fullest potential. Serving individuals, small business, and teams, William's coaching philosophy focuses on not just meeting, but exceeding personal and professional life goals. Let's explore the depth of his coaching approach and the impact it has on those that he works with. And rumor has it, he might even tell us about a new project in his own podcast that he has coming up. William, we're delighted to have you with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
William, tell everybody where you're joining us from today.
People often ask me where I'm from. I'm saying Bronx, New York. They go, yeah, I knew that. I'm like, okay. So then it's working. So then I'm telling the truth.
We know it's the truth. So William, your journey from a certified professional coach to founding CORE Remaster is really inspiring. I was sort of cyber stalking you on your LinkedIn page. Can you share with us a pivotal moment or what led you to decide that coaching wasn't just going to be your career, but your calling?
The more I get asked this question, I try to often find the fastest, shortest way of just summing it all up. And it never seems to work, right? Every time I think I'm going to tell it a certain way, I just, in the moment, come from a place of transparency and vulnerability and just go ahead and tell the truth. And so coaching wasn't ever anything that I ever thought I'd see myself doing. What I mean by that is being an actual certified coach. Throughout all of my years in the health and wellness space, there have often been times where people have said, you're so much more than just a personal trainer. And so I've changed my title several times: health and wellness consultant, wellness advocate, health coach, health and wellness consultant, just to kind of, profit or, where they say, just in a way, try to expand my universe so that, well, if people say I'm more than a personal trainer, then obviously if I take on the title of something that says I'm more than a personal trainer, then that will bring some form of monetary, profit or success. Being someone who tried to be more holistic in their approach, right? It wasn't just about shut up and squat. I have been going through my own challenges in the mental health space. And it was through my own personal journey that I was able to start seeing layers of what people needed. And there was a certain time when I felt responsible for taking on those challenges, right? As I became more transparent in the way of my own struggles, I said, well, obviously they're going through the same thing, so I should just help them do better. It was a struggle being attached to people's outcome and, their success or non-success, right? If they did well, I did well. If they did bad, I did bad. And it kind of put a wrinkle in my own personal mental health journey. And so there was a time through all that, though, the attempt to hold space and to, help people on this greater journey, that people would say to me, oh, you should become a life coach. And I'm like, life coach? And I've told this story before. I was like, what is a life coach? I have no idea what a life coach is.
William, first time I heard it, same thing. I'd be like, who, a life coach? That doesn't even make sense.
Because for me, the word coach has been used in so many different genres. I mean, everyone's a coach, right? You can say, I'm selling protein powder and call yourself coach. So, outside of an actual basketball coach, soccer coach, athletic coach, I didn't understand the word coach, right? And so when the pandemic hit, it was like most people, I was successful, right? The pandemic did not hurt my personal training business at all. It actually was, the first 2 years of the pandemic was some of the most successful years I've ever had in in my business, right? Maybe I was having this real good outlier moment, as they say. But it was during that time I was exploring, like, how can I expand and further my business, for lack of a better way of saying it, right? The moment I was like, how can I say something fancy? I was just like, how can I just make more money, right? But also wasn't feeling very fulfilled as just a trainer, because that's what I call myself, as just a trainer. And as people did encourage me to do more in the space of health and wellness, I just couldn't understand what that could have been. A good friend of mine was like, she was already a life coach, and she had encouraged me to go to IPEC and try out their program. So I signed up for the program, and it was while I was in that program that I realized what a coach could be. And it was just so much more than just what I thought it was. It's not fake therapy. It's not therapy at all. At least I'm speaking from my experience and my education, right? And so that's what took me to the journey. Once I started becoming the product of that product, I realized how I could use this to not only enhance, my life, but to really hold space for people and just be a facilitator towards their personal goals.
Yeah, I love that so much of what you said resonates with me, William, because, right, like coaching to me was like, to your point, I was just like, no one needs a life coach, like to tell you when to get coffee. Like this makes zero sense to me, right? And then in our office, I was a law office administrator at the time, and we were, right, working a criminal defense law office. And we were like, how can we help people make better decisions? So sort of that same piece that you were seeing on the health and wellness end about, like, it's not just about the squat, right? There's other things going on here. And that was really what set me off. But you said something in there, which was the more vulnerable I became, the more of a natural fit. And I'm just wondering if you can talk about that, because I know for myself that once the more vulnerable I came was really about me healing some of my own personal stuff I had going on, right? I had spent time in foster care. I had all of these things that I was carrying, these secrets with me. People kept saying, what are you doing? what's happening over there? And I want some of that. And I'm just wondering how you saw you healing, because that's part of the thing about coaching. When I went to school that I didn't understand for my coaching certificate was this, which was, oh, wait, I got to do the work before I go ask somebody else to do the work. And so I didn't coach for a long time after mine because, man, I had some stuff to work through, William. So I'm just wondering for you what that process was like.
Well, it started, when I started doing cognitive behavior therapy, which basically helps you understand how your thoughts, feelings, and actions work for or against you, right? It was the kind of therapy that helped you understand just how you show up and respond and are, affected by the world. When I was able to begin seeing those patterns in myself at the time, I was kind of starting to observe and see those in others and realize for my clients, if they were trying to lose 10 pounds for 10 years and they haven't lost 10 ounces, then it's not the carbohydrates, right? And although I was still struggling with being in the kind of headspace I needed to be in or wanted to be in, right? It was more of a want than a need. I thought there would be a certain level of validation, right, within myself, because I had already seen these things in my clients. And I thought, well, if I can't fully save myself, or that's my calling, I'm supposed to be like, I know what's wrong with you. Let me help you, right? So I became more vulnerable and started sharing my story. Like, I understand what you're going through, but I was so tied to the outcome for them, it was actually setting me back, right? And because, again, as I said before, I thought it was my job to save them. So me being more vulnerable, thinking like, I understand what you're going through because of my struggles, I can help you. I can fix you. I come to realize that all they wanted to do, they wanted me to shut up so they could squat, right? It's like my therapist helped me understand your clients aren't coming to you to lose 10 pounds, right? Or maybe they are, but it's not your responsibility, or it's your responsibility to help them, but it's not your responsibility to be so tied to the outcome that you feel like you're failing. So my vulnerability towards them actually started making and triggering my mental health in a very bad way. And I started resenting them for that. Like, why can't you just reach the goal that you asked me to help you get so I can feel better about who I am?
That's some good insight, though.
It was rough for me.
Well, I would bet, because Because now it's just you're resenting the people who, A, are paying your bills, right? So there's that piece of like the practical piece of what we're doing here. And where do we go from here? So I'm wondering, can you share a specific moment or client story maybe that encapsulates the impact of your coaching philosophy today?
If there was ever any one particular moment, I think the moment came when I realized, again, that being attached to their outcomes is destroying any outcome that I might have for myself. And that's why I appreciate when I went to school and finally got certified, what the process of learning, to be a coach did for me. And I've always told people that I can break it down in three things. One, it showed me everything I was doing absolutely correct. Like everything I was doing correct and how I was holding space, being compassionate, listening, observing. Two, all the missed opportunities, right? All the missed opportunities to, again, hold space, ask the right question, show compassion. But three, everything I was doing absolutely wrong. And the stories I was telling myself about what their success means to my success and how I attach myself to them, or as I learned the coaching was in that box, right? It was in that box. So I don't know if there was ever any one particular moment as opposed to me having my newfound level of self-awareness, emotional intelligence about how I'm showing up and the stories I tell myself about what it means for them to be successful and what it means for me to feel like a failure if I don't think they're successful in the way that I believe that they really want to be. I was creating the outcomes for them.
So in the work that I do, William, I often refer to this as the inside out work, right? Like you can, whoever your client is, the person doing the squat or working on a team or collaborating anywhere, it doesn't really matter. The end user all depends on me, the person, right? Like how I'm connected. And so if I'm not healed internally, then everything else just gets bad from there, right? Like I'm the source in all the spaces that I walk into. And I think each of us is that. And so I talk about with my clients quite frequently the inside out. So a business might come to me and say, listen, we want to make a better experience for our patient or our clients or whomever, kids and families that we're working for. I'm like, okay, well, let's look on the inside of the organization first, right? Or if it's an individual, let's look on the inside of you first. It's inside out. And that's what I hear you talking about, which is this, you can only give what you're overflowing with. So thinking about that, how do you think, or maybe what are some of the common challenges that you encounter when coaching different types of people or teams or whatever it may be? And how do you spot them and how do you help to overcome them?
Another good question. For me, it starts with understanding if there's no buy-in, and I'm not talking about them actually paying. This is not about money because they'll pay for the session and not have the buy-in, right? So I always set the stage as a coach is that I'm not tied to an outcome. This is a safe place. This is the non-judgmental place. There's no conversation too small. Because for me, if I go in with an agenda, then I'm leading them or telling them what it is they should or shouldn't be working on, what they should or shouldn't be talking about. And so when you ask me that question, it's all about the buy-in, right? I suffered a lot early on in coaching because I thought I had to fix people. Even though everything I learned through my certification was, that's not your job. But had to realize I was still holding on to that level of validation and recognition, right? I went to this great coaching school. I have all these letters behind my name. I'm an expert. And I was like, wait a minute, why am I feeling still feeling these levels of resentment? I thought I freed myself from all that. I'm not just telling people to squat anymore. I'm really, opening up a space, giving an opportunity for people to really work things out. But I realized my job isn't to fix people. My job isn't to tell people what to do. And when I remember that through my education and release that through release my own personal needs, then I was able to show up better as a coach and really become a facilitator, not a dictator. And so, yeah, the challenge is even when you see something, not telling people, what you see, as opposed to helping people see it within themselves.
Yeah. It resonates so much with me. I'm nodding my head as you're talking because For me, that was moving what I call moving out of the reenactment, right? From this rescuer, from I can fix this, I can do this, I can help you, right? To the supporter, which is, William, what do you want to do? Like, I'm not going to do it, William, but what is it? You. And when I move from that I to you, William, what do you want to do? William, what does that look like for you? How are you going to do that? What is it you need from me, right? When I made that switch for me, then it was like, it was easier, to your point. My own mental health was better, right? Because I wasn't trying to fix it for everyone, but also the breakthroughs I saw for people on the other end. So I'm curious because, William, you also hold a certification in energy leadership. And I'm just wondering, tell us a little bit more about that, and how are you using that in your coaching?
Well, the Energy Leadership Index assessment is something that I was able to get certified in as part of the program I was doing for my coaching certification. And so basically the Energy Leadership Index assessment is an assessment that helps you understand how you see yourself in the world, the level of stress you're attached to, the amount of choice you believe that you have in your life. And I always tell people the most powerful weapon we have is the power of choice. So as a coach, I use this assessment to help people understand their process, right? We all see the world through a set of lenses and filters. And those lenses and filters have determined how we show up, experience, and see ourselves in the world. Those lenses and filters have been dictated by the people, places, things, constructs that we grew up in, right? And because of those, we've all had a tremendous amount of success, but we've also had a lot of limitations and missed opportunities. So this Energy Leadership Index assessment allows a person to have a better perception of themselves in the world, right? Because the more self-aware and or intelligent you are about how you see yourself in the world, the greater opportunity you have to basically create the life you want or enjoy the one you already have. But it all starts with your level of stress and the level of choice you believe in your life. And so we're able to use this assessment for you to take kind of a perception test, like how do you see yourself in the world, and what have or are the advantages and disadvantages of how you show up externally in your behavior and internally in how you process things.
I love this. So this is really, another piece I was just talking about the reenactments moving from rescuer to supporter, but one of the other ones in that triangle is moving from victim, where there's nothing I can do here. It's all these things that have happened to me, to driver. And that's really where the Energy Leadership Index comes in, right? Is like, wait, taking ownership, being self-aware and saying, now listen, I might have picked up some of my bias, some of my tolerations because of the things that occurred to me. But now today I get to make a choice, and I can really take back my power, take back my ownership, and become the driver in making the decision that's best for me. Now, William, I'm really intrigued by anything that can move people from victims to drivers. But I found in a long career of coaching and consulting, especially when we're talking about in the business and organizational setting, that sometimes we like to be the victim because it's easier to blame somebody else, right? So it's like, my boss said I had to do it, so I did it exactly the way my boss said, right? And so you should take this up with my boss because it's their fault. And when I've just noticed you get leaders who don't allow that, when you get leaders who are not micromanagers and you get leaders who say, nope, William, you're in charge, some people will recoil from that because they don't want to be responsible. And I'm just wondering if you can maybe highlight if you have examples of this, or do you have some strategies that you find most effective in helping clients when they just keep wanting to kind of go back to that, nope, it's somebody else, it's not me state of mind?
I say the best way to answer that question is, how is it serving you? And how interested are you? Once we established how it is or isn't serving them, then it's, well, how interested are you in achieving X? How interested are you in achieving, X, Y, Z? That's what I'll start with, right? That would be probably the most consistent way I would approach someone that's, pushing back or, feeling like they don't have a choice. And what's incredible about that assessment is it talks about that level one energy, right? That level one energy is that victim energy. It's that sense of, I don't have a choice, because the individual cannot see any other options but the way they've been doing it or the way they've been told they have to do it. And so that's why what's associated with level one energy is no choice or I lose energy, because the individual thinks the ability to change is so out of my scope of power, there's nothing else I can do. And so my question would be, well, how is it serving you? And how interested are you in exploring new ways that maybe you didn't see?
And do you want to change, right? Because that's the other piece is, I say this all the time, sometimes we just don't want to change. I mean, you've done enough work on yourself. Listen, I have enough work I could do on myself that I'll be working on myself until I die. And there's just some things I'm like, I don't want to put the energy into it, right? Like I'm getting older, and there's just some things where I'm like, that's just going to be what it is. We're not getting to that thing. But I think owning that choice, that I've chosen that that's an area either right now or at least for this immediate future is not going to be what I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on this, and I can't do both of those things at once. But I think owning the fact that I'm choosing to do nothing about this, versus that way when I complain to my spouse, my partner, my friend, it's like, you're making a choice, Shen. You're not just, right? You're not that victim to it. You made the choice, and it's like, right, I'm choosing not to deal with this particular issue. And I think there's a lot of power when you can begin to admit, I've chosen this, even when it's causing you pain or draining your energy, right?
Absolutely, because I stand fast in saying this. The most powerful weapon we have is choice. And we are constant interplay between our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, right? And every choice we make in life has an advantage and disadvantage. As a coach, I just am helping my clients be more aware of what choices they're making or not making, and how is that serving you. I'll go back to saying that, how is it serving you, right? I probably will never ask them, do you want to change, right? Because they're either going to say yes or say no. So I keep it very open-ended. How interested are you in exploring new options once in our session or in our engagement, we've established it's not serving you, right? And that's a realization they come to through the way I coach them, for them to be like, oh, wow, this isn't serving me. Okay, well, let's acknowledge and validate that level of transparency and honesty. Now that we've established that, where do we go from here?
In your coaching practice, William, how do you help clients identify and then align those goals with their core values? Because this is another piece, like the next layer of values to me, right? It's what's taking your energy? What are you choosing? But values for me seems to be another really big trigger point, because many of us have inherited values and we haven't necessarily taken the time to say, are these my values first, right? Like our parents, our grandparents, our aunts, whoever raised us has passed down to us some kind of values, but most of us haven't said, do I value the same things that these folks did? And that some of the pain we're in is a misalignment of our values, right? So in your practice, how do you help clients kind of identify and align with their core values?
Well, I like to do this thing what I call as a choice audit, right? And this is just something that's kind of it was developed from my use multiple times that I've administered the assessment, right? Because the assessment, again, it teaches us, it teaches the clients or helps them see their lenses, how they see themselves in the world. And how you see yourself is how you see the world, as I've often said, probably said it 100 times in this podcast episode. But also, how you do anything is how you do everything, right? So I developed this thing called a choice audit, right? And basically that comes from understanding we see the world through three major lenses. We have a fear lens, we have an obligation lens, and we have a passion lens. Once you begin to fully understand what lens you consistently use to make choices in life, then again, that level of self-awareness, that level of emotional intelligence goes up. So I stay in curiosity and just use that data to help them see, wow, I thought everything I was doing was through my passion lens. You could be passionate without using your passion lens. We often get it very confused, right? Because life can be hard, life can be challenging, but stress is a choice.
Yeah. I love that so much, which is one, the stay in curiosity. This is something I'm saying to our listeners all the time, William, is what's the question you can ask here? Right? Like the more you can try, I say, the more you can try to be a preschooler, the better off you'll be in life. Like, just ask questions. I mean, it's the best part about a preschooler. We get annoyed sometimes if you hang around a lot of preschoolers because they're constantly, they just don't know. So they're asking questions, right? Like, we lose that somewhere along our adult journey here. But I love these choice audit, the three lenses you're talking about. One, feelings, because we know feelings are contagious. We can, I can pick up your feelings.
Well,
You
the
can
first
pick up
lens is
my feelings.
fear.
Yeah. Well, fear and
I mean,
feelings.
they're all feelings. I just want to be clear if you heard me
Yeah, yeah,
correct when I
yeah.
said fear, obligation, and passion. So I'm just double checking. But yeah, they're all feelings. Feelings is in everything.
Right. But then the obligation, which I think I hadn't heard anyone use the obligation one in quite some time, which just like struck me. And I was like, okay. One of the great things about the podcast, Williams, is I get to take notes. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. There's something about that obligation one, right? Because I think that for me, and listen, I just talk from my statements, and then I think other people probably feel similarly, is can obligation take over? Because it's like, oh, I got to go to this job because I got to pay my bills because I need to eat because, right? Like you can just keep playing it out, right?
Well, that's what's powerful about understanding these three lenses, right? Because when we talk about the obligation lens, that's where you do most of your, you know, rationalization, your level of tolerance, your level of justification, and how much you avoid conflict. Now, it's a scale or a spectrum, right? So there's definitely a crossover between things that you may feel you're obligated to, but also doing out of fear. And there's also things that you may feel obligated to, but you are doing out of passion. But there's an extreme, distinct difference between things you do through a passion lens and things you do through your fear lens. So much of us believe we're in that obligation stage, but it's really a lot of fear.
I love this. I'm literally taking notes because I'm like, oh, well, William just said something that's for me to look at later when we're not on this podcast. That's for sure.
Everyone, can do a choice audit and really understand what is the motivation behind the things I do or don't do. Am I motivated by fear? And then again, all these lenses are, an interplay between each other. It's just about how much power, control, or awareness you have. Am I showing up right now in that obligation lens? Or am I doing this because I'm afraid? Right? I don't want to speak up and tell my friend I really don't want to hang out with them because I'm afraid I'm going to lose that friendship. That energy is showing up in other areas of your life. It's not unique to this one relationship you may have with this one person. Maybe you don't know how to identify it in other areas of your life, but when you begin to do that choice audit, you be like, wow, this is the same energy.
Yeah. Okay, listeners, rewind that. Listen to what William just said a second time, because that's the key right there for me, is that this idea of like, oh, that's only in this particular relationship. It's like, no, that'll bleed over to your colleague that you sit next to in the cubicle, right? And then, because we're just one person, that's what I keep saying. And feelings are contagious. And so that fear here will bleed over into that fear showing up there. And so you're so right about that. William, I can't wait to ask you these quick fire questions because I know I'm going to get a lot of information of stuff to go watch and read and do. But as you kind of are looking at the coaching industry, it's evolved a lot over the last even decade, to your point. Even in a post-COVID world, it has evolved. How do you stay informed, and how are you continuously working to improve yourself so that you can help your clients meet their needs as well?
Well, first of all, I'm a product of my product. I don't know if I would be as passionate about what I do if I wasn't a product of my product, right? So I have a therapist and I have a coach. I have a coaching community and I read. But the biggest thing I do is I listen now. I used to think that I listened a lot, especially when I decided to lean more into the coaching aspect of my business. Starting out, I thought, but I was really just listening for opportunities to show how smart I am and why I spent so much time and money getting certified. And that kind of hindered me a little bit because I wanted to be so much better than any, uncertified coach or any coach that didn't go to the school that I went to, and that worked against me, right? So I constantly remind myself that you're never going to stop evolving. And you got to sometimes just lean into that evolution and not fight it, because the truth is undefeated, right? The stories you tell yourselves are the stories you just tell yourself. I tell people all the time, we are gifted storytellers. But what is the truth behind those stories? And so, yeah, I'm learning to be more honest and transparent with myself and not contradict the things that I say to my clients, or not be afraid to be vulnerable. Even when I'm asked questions like this, I'm a product of this product. I understand that every day brings new challenges, but but we're products of the consistent things we do. And when you understand those consistent things, then that's when you have the opportunity to change.
Yeah. It's a journey, not a destination, right? Like we never arrive. And I think for me that was the big piece to overcome, is like, you're not going to do all these assessments or this one right assessment. For a while, really early in my coaching career, it was going to date me about 15, 17 years ago. It was, oh, let me get certified in this accreditation or that accreditation, or this, to your point, like using energy leadership index, or, there are all of these out there that you could do. And I was like, I'm going to stumble on the one right assessment tool that's going to fix all of it. And I just came to realize, no, it's a journey. Like it's not any one right thing. It's this like small things over long periods of time, right? Which I think you would say to your workout clients. It's like, you're not going to just come in one day and squat 800 pounds. Like slowly you would work up to that, right? If that's your goal. So any emerging trends or tools that you see that are coming that you're excited about, or that you're thinking about integrating into your practice?
Not currently.
Yeah. Awesome.
Just podcasting.
Yeah. Tell us about your podcast, William. What's your goal with your podcast? So first, tell us what it'll be called, so people can go look for it on all the podcast platforms. And what's your goal or hope with a podcast?
My podcast has been a huge resource for me to understand some of the mental health struggles that I'm still battling. Right? I've been wanting to start and do this podcast for over 2 years. And I just keep talking myself out of why I don't just press record. Just again, being tied to an outcome, or what I like to call all in energy. And when we have all in energy, it's hard to even not only create the process, but trust the process. And so I'm excited to be closer to press and record. And so the name of my podcast is going to be called I Am Selfish. And I Am Selfish is a daily affirmation. It's a movement. It's a daily reminder that you can give yourself permission to prioritize yourself. It's a radical approach to self-care, and understanding that there's nothing in your life that you can't achieve on an emotional level if you put yourself first. And when it's like, no, I don't think you're ever going to take off and fly. But, a lot of times people think, oh, when I became a parent, my life changed or ended. It changed, but it didn't start or begin, when you became a parent. And whatever, when you was in a relationship, I Am Selfish is just personal. It's what you make it. But at its core, and why I'm passionate about starting this movement, it's personal, right? It's because for me, I didn't know how to ever put myself first. I only existed on the idea that my level of validation and worth was on how I can hold space and do things for other people, right? Don't look at me, look what I did for them. And so my podcast, I Am Selfish, is a platform that's designed to help people know that they can give themselves permission to put themselves first. And that's not selfish, it's selfish.
Yeah. I can't wait to listen, because for me, again, William, I just think that is the key, right? The core of you, the you getting in touch with that, getting aligned with that there's nothing selfish in that. It is purely you only give what you're overflowing with, right? Like I think I heard Oprah Winfrey say in a talk she did that I saw online through this Stanford Business School. She's like, I used to be afraid of that. I used to, especially from people who say, oh, you're so full of yourself, right? Like that's some kind of knock that how dare you be full of yourself. And she said, no, now I embrace that because it's only then I'm so full of myself that I'm overflowing. I have all of this to give to others. And I do think that that's the state of our mental health in this nation right now is that we have to do some inward looking so outwardly we can be healthy together as a community, right? That's not selfish.
It's meant to challenge the people's perceptions, right? Because in my practice, I help, I offer people the opportunity to understand that you do have choices. And sometimes our inability to see or lean into those choices does come, from how much permission we give ourselves. Because we're so tied to like certain levels of obligation or certain levels of fear, right? When I see someone, struggling with what they want, what they need, or what they deserve out of life, I'll often say, well, what if you started putting yourself first? What if you lived your truth? Because the truth is undefeated, right? I am selfish is meant to challenge the idea of treat others the way you want to be treated, right? I am selfish gives you the opportunity to treat yourself the way you want to be treated. Then you set that standard. Then you set that boundary, right? Then you have the opportunity for people to see who you are, who's your truth. So yeah, we all could be a little selfish. And also want to challenge the idea of you putting yourself first, because sometimes we don't put ourselves first, or we're afraid to put ourselves first because your strength can make people feel insecure, but it can make people or triggers others' insecurity. Oh, when someone sees your strength, yeah, sometimes there's a level of jealousy. And I'm saying you can have this too. You can have this strength if you want it. Just just be selfish. Put yourself first.
Well, and in doing that work, this is what I found for myself, and I'll use I statements here, is that I realized when I started working on myself, to your point, but it does trigger insecurity in others. I saw that for sure. And the thing is then realizing, is this my work or is this your work? Right? Because sometimes people will try to put their work on you. Like, oh, well, you act this way. It's like, that's your work, not my work, right? And understanding those different pieces is critical. So I think I know how you're going to answer this question before I get into quickfire, but I want to ask it anyways. So you've successfully navigated multiple industries. You're amazing at what you do. But what do you see maybe as a key trait for leaders? Because we have a lot of leaders who will be listening to this episode, no doubt. What's a key trait that leaders could cultivate to thrive in kind of today's fast-paced, ever-changing business environment? Is there maybe one or two key traits that you see that are critical for leaders?
Compassion and respect.
With yourself first and then others, right?
Oh yeah, it all starts with yourself. Everything. The best version of you and better is always subjective, but we all know what that version of ourselves is. And if we are a little more selfish, we can tap into that version of ourselves. And maybe that version means you're going to challenge some of the constructs you grew up in, right? Maybe that version of you is going to, change your social, settings or the people you hang out with. We carry so much resentment and self-doubt and shame and frustration with us every day. It's going to be hard for us to show up and have compassion for other people. I think a lot of the problems we have in the world, where it comes from like judgment or, people being hateful, comes from our own levels of trauma and insecurities and stuff, right? Like I said earlier, a lot of times your strength makes other people feel so insecure that all they know how to do is push back. And so if you find yourself in a leadership position or want to be a leader, I believe it does start with that self-awareness, right? And then how much compassion and respect you can have for others.
Yeah, you tucked one of the words in there that I think we should use more often, and that's shame. You kind of tucked it in there on me, William, but I was like, oh, there it is. Shame and guilt rides in the forefront for so many of us as the avenue for everything else. William, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I can't wait to hear your answers, as I mentioned. So tell us, what's the latest book or show that has caught your attention? Why did it stand out for you? What's resonating with you right now?
The latest book I'm reading is Range by David Epstein, I think his name is. And I don't know why I can't remember the author's name, but it's Range is the name of the book.
We'll find it.
Also, I'm rereading.
We'll put a link in the show notes, so no worries.
I'm also rereading one of my favorite books, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. I'm reading both of those currently, which is getting me ready for my podcast. So I was like, it's time for me to reread Big Magic as I'm in my head about starting this podcast. So I would say Range and Big Magic.
William, you need a podcast. Like if you're like, I'm waiting for a sign, I think here it is. That's all I'm going to say. That's it. If you could have dinner with a historical or contemporary leader, we want to know who you would have dinner with, but what's the one, you're such a good coach. What's the one question you'd want to ask them?
In a fictional setting, I would love to have dinner with Don Draper from Mad Men. And my question to him would be, explain your process in 10 words or less.
William, I feel like we could have a whole podcast episode dedicated to this, just you and I talking about Don Draper. Because talk about a guy who was faking it. Because he's not even Don Draper. There's a whole thing to unpack there, William. I love the answer. What's the one hobby or activity that is just filling you with joy? You love it. You look forward to the time you get to spend, or you can't wait till you get to do it. What fills William with pure joy?
I've currently reestablished my love of singing.
You got a few bars for us, William? What do we got here?
Not today.
Not today.
That's a different podcast.
I love that we can have you on again just to do a little singing for us.
I mean, I'm so excited to be invited, and I've enjoyed all my time that I've had with you today.
William, how can listeners find you, CORE Remastered, get in touch with you, where they might find out when your first episode drops of your podcast? Give them all the details.
Well, you can email me. It's always the simplest and easy. Will@CORE, CORE, remastered.com. Website, www.coreremastered.com. And you can see me on Instagram at CORE Remastered.
It's very complicated to find William, as you know. CORE Remastered. William, I am so grateful for all of your insights today. True, like when I say I took notes, this is one that I'm going to have to go back and relook at again and again. I mean it. The work that you're doing, super powerful, super incredible. Thanks for coming on the show today. Appreciate having you here today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate your time. And I look forward to continue building this newfound friendship.
I am looking forward to it. Can't wait for the podcast. Please send us links and we'll share.
Can't wait to have you
with
on
our audience as well. I'd love to come.
Invite you on.
I would love to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
For everyone listening, thanks for tuning into Mindful Management, creating a trauma-informed work environment. For more resources, please visit our show notes. Be sure you hop over to William's webpage, like his Instagram page. For other free tools, go to chefaloconsulting.com. If you've enjoyed today's discussion, show your support by liking, commenting, following, and reviewing this episode on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach listeners and brings even better content your way. We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment on Spotify or YouTube to share what topics you'd like us to cover or who you'd like to see on as our next guest. Maybe it's you or you know somebody else. Drop us a show note. We'd love to hear from you. We're always looking for fresh voices and perspectives. Thanks again for listening. And remember, we can do hard things together. Until next time, we'll see you then. Mindful Management, creating a trauma-informed work environment, is brought to you by Chefalo Consulting. To learn more about Chefalo Consulting and our trauma-informed change management and professional development solutions, please visit chefaloconsulting.com. That's Chefalo, CHEFALO, consulting.com. Make sure you don't miss these transformative conversations by subscribing to Mindful Management wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for listening, and remember, change happens one step at a time.